you that we are going to end the meeting as the program or the agenda. Okay, so maybe we can start with the word of prayer. Who can volunteer? Wadia, you can help us with the prayer?
Shall we pray? Our Heavenly Father Jehovah, we approach you this time to be with us as we program the ZACC 2024 report launch program. May you be with the program so that it goes well and continue being the of the day. Father Jehovah, we leave everything under your care and this is the word of youth and we stand as to pray. Amen.
Thank you very much. Maybe we can start with the introductions, just to know who is in the room. I'll start with myself. My name is Bright Zonde. I am the Advocacy Policy and Research Manager from TIZ, and I will be moderating the meeting today. Where can we start from? That end? Let's allow the mic to go through, please, to go around.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Zanji Sinkala. I'm the Communications Officer at Transparency International Zambia.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kwenda Paipi. I'm from BBC Media Action. I'm a project manager for the Citizens Voice Project, which is funded by the EU and the Government of Ireland.
Good morning, everyone. Chembe Chilufia is my name, coming from Alliance for Accountability Advocates Zambia as Executive Director. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lowland Kalangu from Hot FM.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Malala Mondela from the Embassy of Sweden.
Good morning. My name is ZACC Malasha from GIZ.
Good morning. My name is Tamika Halwindi from Transparency International Zambia.
Good morning. Maurice Nyambe, also from TIZ.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Greg Saidi with UNDP.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Salome Sichali from Diakonia, Zambia.
Yes, yourself as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Wadia Nonde from TIZ.
Okay. That's it? Or the camera people as well?
Good morning. My name is Hamli Lohandia from TIZ.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's start off by going through the program and just to get to the same page. So the meeting today we are attending, of course, is the Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference 2024 Highlights Report launch, as well as the launch of the theme for the 2025 conference. So if I draw your attention to the program, I'll just quickly run through what we have planned out for this morning. So first of all, we are going to have welcome remarks, which is what I am doing now. Then we'll go to a presentation of the 2024 highlights report, which will be done by Ms. Tamika Halwindi. And then we'll open it up for some feedback, which is on the report and the highlights of last year's conference. And then we'll go to have a tea break for the second presentation, which will be on the 2025 ZACC proposal, which highlights what we have planned out for the conference that is upcoming this year. That will be done by myself. And then we'll again open it up for some feedback in terms of what you want to, advise us in terms of the hosting of the upcoming conference, the one for this year. After that, we'll have the launch of the theme by our executive director, Mr. Maurice Nyambe. So we'll do a bit of a swap later on, so that the launch of the theme comes before my presentation, because otherwise I'm going to talk about the theme. So I'll just do a swap in the program, then we'll move on to the photo session, and then lunch to end the meeting. On the same page, are we? Okay. So the Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference is the premier conference that Transparency International Zambia hosts every year. This conference has become bigger over the past few years that we have been holding the conference. If you, of course, remember, the previous conference was held in Kitwe last year. And so in this particular meeting, we're going to go through some of the key outcomes or outputs from the conference and just reflect back on the key highlights of the conference, living back in terms of what happened during the conference. And then we will spend some time to plan around the upcoming conference, and we'll present some key information, for example, the date of the conference, the theme of the conference, the plan in terms of the strategy for the stakeholders to be invited to the conference, as well as the costing or the budget for the conference and mobilization strategy. So that's it. Quickly moving to the first presentation, which is the presentation of the 24 highlights. I want to welcome Ms. Tamika Alwindi to come and present. Let's clap for her, please.
Okay, good morning once again. It's my pleasure to run through the 2024 ZACC highlights report, which will help us kind of give us a refresher in terms of what were the key highlights from the 2024 Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference. That is the outline of the presentation, and just to it has a lot of pictures, a lot of amazing pictures that portray the conference that we had. So last year we had the 5th Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference, the ZACC, and its theme was around extractives, namely collaborative partnerships for combating corruption in extractive industries. The main conference was 2 days. On the first day, we recorded 214 stakeholders participating, and on the second day, around 164 participants attending the conference. The reduction in number is usually because some of our high-level delegates only attend day one, but we can assure you that from our memories and from this report, both days were very impactful in terms of content. The conference, the main conference began with an opening ceremony where we had high-level speakers speaking to different aspects of the theme. We had the EU ambassador who gave her remarks, and in her remarks, there was commitment from the EU to help combat issues to do with illegal mining, as well as illicit financial flows in extractives. We also had remarks from the Embassy of Sweden, the ambassador, who gave, is the mic okay? It's cutting, okay. Who gave his remarks virtually, and his remarks were around responsible mining practices and responsible investment in the mining sector. Still on high-level speeches, we had a speech from the U.S. ambassador to Zambia, who gave a very emotive speech around the scale of illicit financial flows in the mining sector. We also had a speech from the acting British High Commissioner to Zambia, and her speech focused on how corruption or corrupt practices such as bribery actually disadvantage responsible investment and business. We also highlight the speech that was given by Dr. Bene, who is the president of Zambia Chamber of Mines. And the highlight of his speech was around how investors and owners of the mine actually set an example for how their mining operation or their business is conducted. So if they have integrity, then their directors and managers will also run their business with integrity. Last but not least, we also had a speech from the lead, country lead Chandler Foundation, who conveyed support in terms of advocacy efforts to increase disclosure around mining licenses, contracts, and other processes. The keynote address was the provincial minister of the province, who was represented by the permanent secretary of Copperbelt province. And in the speech, they highlighted government's overall commitment to the fight against corruption and some of the progress that they have made from the government end. After that, if you recall, I believe we broke away to take some photos to capture the spirit of the conference. And as you can see there is a picture with some of the ambassadors, as well as our chapter president, and another photo opportunity. Like I said, there are a lot of photos in this presentation. Moving on to the actual substance and meat of the conference, we had 8 panel discussions in total. Panel discussion 1 typically is around unpacking the theme, trying to understand the thinking behind the theme and the conference. So it does set a tone in terms of what to expect from the panel discussions that follow. This panel session was moderated by Mr. Maurice K. Nyambe, who is our executive director, and the panelists included WWF, the acting anti-corruption director general then, as well as our vice chapter president, who also happens to be the chair of the Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference in terms of the organizing committee. The second panel discussion was around the legal and policy institutional frameworks, focusing on opportunities for addressing corruption risks in extractors. What I have done for this presentation, and that might not be in the report, is we have tried to highlight some of the progress or indicators we are seeing by the theme that was discussed, because I believe that was one of the recommendations that we got. So in terms of the progress markers around legal, policy, and institutional frameworks, the first to highlight is during that period and including part of this year, the Ministry of Mines made revisions to its key laws, breaking the former Mines and Minerals Development Act into 2 parts, the Mineral Regulations Commissions Act and the Geological and Mineral Development Act. Their rationale for doing this is to separate the policy aspect and direction side from the actual implementation and administration of the mining sector. The enactment of the Minerals Regulations Commissions Act would bring forth the Minerals Regulations Commission, which from the ministry's vision, will take charge when it comes to licensing issues, mine safety, and environmental issues, as well as monitoring of the sector. And the ministry will concentrate on policy, geological mapping, and investment promotion. The Ministry of Mines earlier this year also launched the Zambia Integrated Mining Information System, which has experienced some challenges, but just to recognize that there was some effort to link, to make progress to digitize the mining licensing process, but also in doing so, link it with other systems such as the PAGRA system, the land system, etc., etc. So that was the vision. The Ministry of Mines also launched a stakeholder engagement strategy as well as a communications strategy. We're also aware that Anti-Corruption Commission is in the works to conduct a corruption vulnerability assessment for the Ministry of Mines, and I suppose this will be internal, but we also saw that the ACC with the Attorney General made a visit to the mining cadastre to kickstart, as part of efforts to kickstart this work. We've also seen increased information sharing by the Ministry of Mines pertaining to licensing decisions made by the committee, the geological or geophysical survey, what they're undertaking in terms of reforms as well, which we can mark as some progress in that area. Panel discussion 3 was business integrity and responsible mining. And here, while we looked at the global and regional perspectives, the panel also made efforts to kind of narrow it down to the Zambian context. And we had a representative from the small scale sector represented. So most of the issues pertained to artisanal and small scale mining in relation to the business integrity practices, but also how they can mine responsibly. In terms of the progress that we have noted, mostly this has been quite skewed to the ASM sector, given how problematic the sector has been and continues to be, because there's still a lot of work to be done. Under the Geological and Minerals Development Act, the Ministry of Mines has now established a specific department for artisanal and small-scale mining. The ministry is also in works to develop the ASM strategy as well as an ASM manual. I believe part of this work is being supported by UNDP as well. And coincidentally, there was the hosting of the first ever ASM conference earlier this week. So some progress at least to create a framework for more responsible mining in the ASM sector. Panel discussion 4 was around corruption and illicit financial flows, looking at a regional perspective. And I remember there was a very captivating keynote address from the Director of Public Prosecution, who made a commitment. And as you will see in the next slide, in the next slide, that commitment has been fulfilled. So with the DPP, we saw that there's this launch of the Zambia International Interagency Framework on Collaboration and Cooperation to combat illegal mining and illicit financial flows, which was launched this year in June, I believe. And part of these efforts have also been supported through the European Union. So we have seen that on one end, the DPP actually lived up to his commitment, but also the EU, who indicated that they had support for this work during the pause. So that was a key progress marker along this discussion session. Panel discussion number was around promoting contract transparency as well as beneficial ownership transparency as it relates to the extractive sector. In terms of the progress markers that we have noted, so government commenced amendments to the Companies Act, and most of these revisions were specifically to strengthen beneficial ownership provisions. But we have noted that efforts have since stalled, so we're not sure where in the process government is with this proposed bill. We've also seen strides more broadly to implement the Access to Information Act, and recently we saw the government publishing the regulations for access to information. We've also had sight of a draft Zambia EITI report, which proposes to enhance reporting and disclosure of some contracts, memorandum of understandings, as well as beneficial ownership in the mining sector. So that is some of the progress that we are noting around this session. The next session was partnering with local communities to enhance accountability of revenues generated from natural resources. Another engaging session that looked at how communities can benefit from mining, but also how we can enhance accountability mechanisms for the revenues that go to local authorities, which are quite substantial from mining investment. In terms of some of the progress markers, we as civil society collectively and jointly have continued to hold these convening spaces, including through district alternative mining endeavors, where we try and bring the different players, communities, government, mining companies, to create a platform to have this dialogue around accountability and transparency. At district level, this usually focuses on which mines are paying revenue to the local authority and how the local authority is using those funds. But admittedly, I think there still needs some work to be done, some strengthening of that accountability mechanism. We've also seen that the government is looking to provide for local content through the recent legal revisions. And what this would do would hopefully provide an opportunity for citizens most broadly, but also it has provisions for locals within those particular communities to participate in local procurement driven by mining investment in their sector. There is also a move for the government, for local communities and citizens to directly participate in the sector, particularly through artisanal and small-scale mining. Panel discussion 7 was around remedying human rights violations and the environmental impact from extractives. Another engaging session, and maybe I'm biased because I attended this session. However, in terms of progress, we would say it's neither here nor there. We have seen efforts by civil society organizations, cooperating partners, and some public institutions who have decried the violations of environmental and human rights. Unfortunately, we have seen an upward trend in terms of scale and also presence of these human rights violations, as well as environmental impacts from mining. I mean, from the pollution case that has captured the nation, but other pollution cases that are being reported because of gold mining and related human rights violations accompanying them. So I suppose more work needs to be done in that area. The last panel discussion was also a side session, which was hosted by NDI, and it was looking at how to promote transparency and accountability through asset disclosure in extractives. Again, with this session, as with the previous one, we haven't noted any notable progress. From our assessment, there is not demonstrated political will or commitment around asset declaration and disclosures. And we still do not have a law framework, a comprehensive law around asset declaration. So those were the key sessions, panel discussion sessions that were held during the 2024 ZACC. We also had a closing ceremony after the discussions, and we had a guest speaker for that closing ceremony, who was His Royal Highness Dr. Chief Mumena. And in his remarks, he gave a very compelling speech. And the highlight of that speech was where, he was really expressing his sadness of how you have these communities that are hosting immense wealth, but are still poor, and something that we are still experiencing and have failed to kind of get our heads around how we can improve the livelihoods of host communities in mining, who host mining investment. The conference recommendations, we had 8 in total. The first recommendation was to strengthen regulatory frameworks, as well as establish robust frameworks to ensure transparency, accountability, and enforcement. I think in some of my previous slides, we've seen some strides made to do that, and it's still work in progress. Recommendation 2 was to continue implementing the extractive industry transparency initiative, and this initiative promotes transparency through their reports, and in so doing, hopefully triggering civil society organizations and communities to demand accountability for the information, using the information disclosed. The third recommendation was to continue and I suppose enhance environmental and social impact assessment in extractive industries. This recommendation, definitely going by what we have seen in the media and what's happening, would definitely need further engagement and strengthening. Recommendation 4 was to protect human rights and in the extractive industries, particularly rights related to land, livelihoods, labor, and the rights to life. Tied with recommendation 3, still quite a lot of work to be done to get to a place where we can be comfortable. Recommendation 5 was to provide remedies to affected communities and establishing and expanding mechanisms for these remedies. So grievance redress mechanisms, feedback mechanisms around compensation, so that communities can have these discussions and are able to give feedback and also complain if they're not satisfied with what's provided for. Recommendation 6 was to promote corporate accountability and encourage mining companies, particularly, or companies in extractive industries, to adopt responsible practices and business integrity practices that would ensure human rights and respect for the environment. Recommendation 7 was to sustain the participation of young people and to continue to include young people and youths in anti-corruption initiatives and interventions. Recommendation 8 was to support community-led initiatives so that we can empower these communities and collaborate with them so that they're able to take initiative and ownership of different accountability initiatives that would lead to better natural resource governance in their communities. As mentioned, we also had a youth conference, which was held before the main conference. And there you can see some of the happy, youthful faces in the picture. That's a picture of some of the pupils posing with Her Worship the Mayor of Kitwe. So the youth conference was attended by young people from 4 secondary schools in Kitwe and 2 tertiary institutions who were identified with the help of anti-corruption commission. So meaning these schools have either anti-corruption clubs or related clubs, which would help in terms of sustaining some of the work and engagement. The conference was officiated by the then acting Director General of the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Mayor of Kitwe, and TIZ Executive Director. So some photos of the youth engagement. In the opening speeches, just to highlight, the Mayor's speech kind of evoked how youth involvement in mining governance may have the potential to reshape the sector and the industry. The speech from then acting DG from the ACC looked at how the youth in Zambia can contribute more broadly to building more accountable, fair and transparent society, and therefore reducing corruption in our communities at low level, but then even as we go at a higher level. Our youth conference are usually signified by the debate and quiz competitions that we conducted. So the quiz competition, which is usually for secondary schools, was won by Mukwa Boys. And then the debate competition at the Catholic University, Zambia Catholic University, emerging as the winners of the 2024 ZACC debate. And there you can see the winners of the quiz competition with their club matron. They were very, very happy on that day. It's very exciting. And there are some of the students, I believe from Chibote Secondary School, during the school quiz competition. A student, I think just after making contribution towards the youth conference. Last but not least, the 2024 Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference was made possible with the generous support of cooperating partners, and these are the Embassy of Sweden, the US Embassy through USAID, Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, Chandler Foundation, Waverly Street Foundation, Energy for Growth Hub, the European Union here in Zambia, as well as the United Nations Development Program. Without these partners, I think it would not have been possible to pull off such an incredible event and conference last year. Thank you so much. Here ends my presentation.
Thank you very much, Tamika, for that excellent presentation. I'll open it up to the stakeholders for questions, comments. Any questions and comments around the highlights report or the conference we held last year? Okay. Anyone to go first? Feedback, comment, questions? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. And I think it was nice that the conference was held on the copper belt to talk about extractives. What I haven't just seen in the presentation is whether most of our investors in the extractive industries were invited, especially those that we have seen have been at the forefront of violating either environmental laws or human rights laws, and whether they did come to the conference and whether they did say something about what they were going to do to improve the situation. Thank you.
Okay, another question? Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. I think it's especially heartening to see that you follow up on the recommendations from the conference. I think it would be also useful to add to the report intentions for follow-up on issues that are not concluded. So there's been a lot of progress, and we know that many of those issues did not originate from the conference, but they've been ongoing for a couple of years or months. So it would be useful to share what are the steps moving forward, bearing in mind that it is not only TIZ that follows up, but if there's an indication of what TIZ will do, as well as other partners who are aware of. And then secondly, another comment is, I think for me it's concerning to see that when you report on the progress, there is progress in terms of making it easier to mine in Zambia, making processes more transparent, trying to link the systems. There's definitely progress. But when it comes to the benefits from mining, that's where you see, even on your presentation, that's where we had the red, that the human rights abuses continue. There's no political will towards asset disclosure. And we know that those are the places where the gaps are. So we continue to make it easier to mine and to take the resources out, but we are not looking at the benefits for citizens. So my question is, what is TIZ doing to enhance this aspect of the social and governance concerns? Thank you.
Yes, more comments?
Mine is more of an addition to the previous comment and concerns. Yes, a lot of progress and good presentation, Tamika. So mine is really on the follow-ons again. I think I'd like to just get an appreciation on what this year's conference looks like in relation to the follow-ons. For instance, a case in point was given on the asset disclosure that was just spoken to. So what does this year's conference look like in terms of, how we're doing, building strategy, from the recommendations that were made and the gaps that have been identified in the highlights that have just been given, what does this year's conference look like in terms of advocacy? How do we pick up where we left off? So community beneficiation, asset disclosures, so that we're not merely ticking the box. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe we can pause here and we can take the other questions as second round of questions. Okay, so I'll start off with some of the answers, then I'll call upon Tamika to maybe give a response on what we are doing in the area of issues of environmental impact and, impact on livelihood, versus just, exploiting more of the minerals and getting the economic benefit, but what happens to the communities. You can comment on that. First of all, yes, the conference was held in the Copper Belt, and then in terms of the stakeholders. So I just wanted to clarify here that every conference that we host has got what we call the primary stakeholder that needs to attend the conference. And so it is the consideration of where the primary stakeholder that needs to attend the conference is located. That is what we take into account when deciding where the conference will be held. So for of course, the one held in Kitwe, we were looking at mining companies. And so mining companies were the core participant in the conference, and we invited a lot, majority of the participants' invitation went to the mining companies. Yes, they did show up. Majority of them do not have the platform to speak on most of the panels in the high level, apart from, of course, FUM. But we had them, interject and pose a lot of questions in the panel discussion where they participated effectively, making some commitments and some. And it's unfortunate, of course, what is happening now in terms of the pollution issue. But yes, mining companies did participate in last year's conference. So even in this particular conference we host, we will again look at the core participants and decide, and those will be invited. That's about 50% of the invitation have to go to the core participants of the conference. Intentions to follow up, what are the steps moving forward? We had an elaborate plan to follow up on the conference, and which is still ongoing. Part of it is the tracking of the commitments made through the conference, and so we are still going through those. Usually for the report itself, we give this report at the next conference. So we are still implementing those activities. That is, we are tracking the conference commitments in terms of what stakeholders committed to, and then we'll reach out to the stakeholders to get feedback in terms of progress made with respect to those commitments. We also have the conference declaration, which is now the commitment from all the people that participated at the conference, who are the anti-corruption stakeholders. So for the declaration as well, we provide a report at the next conference, so we will track in terms of progress against each of the declaration. For your information, the declarations are in the highlights report, which will be circulating very soon, so you can be able to look through and see progress with respect to those. So we have that process underway. We of course mentioned that it's been a bit slow, but we're going to definitely have a comprehensive report, better than last time when we did our report at the conference. Then, in terms of this year's conference, the 2025 conference, we have built on this in terms of our advocacy efforts, as well as in terms of tracking the outcomes of the conference. But before I give, I end up giving information on that, because I have a substantive presentation on the proposal for the conference, which will include this aspect, and then we can have a further discussion. So I can postpone this response to this question until after my presentation. Tamika, maybe coming in on the aspect of communities. Where's our mic?
Thank you, moderator. Yeah, I'll admit, Mala, this is a very difficult question. Of the day, this administration argues that citizens get a lot of benefit from the mining sector in terms of tax revenues. And we have seen, I think, the impetus for them to use this sector to grow the economy or to increase domestic resource mobilization. But on the other hand, I don't know if it's a coincidence. I don't know if it's a coincidence or, should I stand? Okay. This one is now. Thank you. I don't know if it's a coincidence that this year we have seen really an increase in pollution incidents from the mining sector, as well as reports of human rights abuses. I mean, we've seen the instances of what happened in Mfumbwe, as well as Kasempa. Some of the efforts that we have been doing, not only alone as Transparency International Zambia, but with other civil society organizations, is having a conversation, number one, with the Ministry of Mines. So of course, there's this 3 million tons copper strategy. And our warning alarm to them is, look, we are at arguably between 800 and 1,000 metric tons per year. And this is what the sector is looking like. When you look at your tax revenues, but then you look at what is the impact on human lives and the environment, the balance sheet is not balancing, to use that term. would there be a reconsideration in terms of how, as a country, would manage 3 million tons? It would look chaotic in our opinion, and also in my opinion. The other thing that we'll be doing, which is a bit timely, I suppose, right, is this research on business and human rights, particularly in the extractive sector, and developing some sort of tool that would help communities monitor the effects or the impacts. And of course, there's been an entire conversation around benefits and benefit sharing. From the Northwestern province, the traditional leaders there are proposing direct benefit sharing with host communities that host mining. And their argument is justified, but also they have argued that other communities who don't have mining can do a similar thing. For instance, communities around the Kariba Dam, or communities who host wildlife, etc., etc. I think it's just for the government or the administration to agree to some sort of benefit sharing mechanism directly with the communities that would, I suppose, appease all stakeholders, mining companies and mining investment included. There's this promising work around local content, which has stalled, given the push and pull in terms of what percentage are local communities able to actually supply mining companies. And of course, that regulation or SI would define what goods and services host communities can supply, what goods and services citizens who are not from the host community can supply, and what percentage of that would make procurement. So I think a lot of conversation, very little doing, and a lot of improvement, of course, to be made when it comes to environmental management. I think briefly that would be my response, but very thought-provoking question.
Thank you very much, Tamika. Do we have second round of questions, feedback? Are we already happy to move on from this conference, last year's conference? We are tired. We want to move on to the future. Any other question, comment? None? I don't see any. Okay, so I think we can proceed with our program. Since we have had feedback from the stakeholders, I would like to invite you for a tea break. I'm already ahead of time, which is excellent, right? So we can take our 15 minutes to have a tea break. And then when we come back, we'll go straight into the launch of the 2025 theme, as well as the launch of the 2024 highlights report, which will be circulated to all of you. And then we'll go to the last presentation. So we can go for our tea break, 15 minutes. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't say. Tea break is just out the door and then turn right. Okay, yeah. Hello. Okay, so we're ready to continue with our program. I hope you have seen the report that has been put on your table. So we're about now to launch that report, as well as the theme for the 2025 Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference. To launch the theme of the 2025 Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference, I'd like to welcome our Executive Director, Mr. Maurice Nyambe. Let's encourage him a little bit. Some claps, or you are still eating? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Bright, and good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the most exciting segment of our meeting today. Not that boring stuff we're looking at there. All right. So I'd like to welcome you once again to this segment where we are, of course, revealing the theme of the 2025 Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference. But before I get into that, just to mention that we're very excited to have you, all our cooperating partners, having responded affirmatively to our invitation to this meeting. And so we're excited to see all of you. And thank you so much for your continued support over the years, not just to this conference, but to many other aspects of our work. Allow me to also mention that as some of you will know, or as some of you will have observed, we as TIZ are in fact celebrating our 25th anniversary for the entirety of this year. So this whole year is our 25th anniversary celebration year. And over the last 25 years that we have been in existence and that we have worked in Zambia, we have scored some notable successes. And one of the most visible ones, probably in the last few years, certainly in the last 5 years or so, has been the establishment of the Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference, not only as a national, but also regional and even international platform for reflecting on the progress that we are making in different aspects of the fight against corruption. The idea of this conference has always been to leverage on the skills, the expertise, and the experiences of different stakeholders in a way that allows for a recalibration of the anti-corruption and good governance agenda at local level, at national level, regional level, and even at global level. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2025 Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference will be the 6th in the series, and the previous 5 editions have gone some way to contribute to the growing discourse on good governance as well as anti-corruption advocacy here in Zambia. The selection of a theme for each Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference is arguably the most consequential decision that we make. This is because the theme not only sets the premise for the deliberations that happen in the conference, but it also has a direct correlation to who is invited to attend the conference as speakers, panelists, or even ordinary delegates. So we therefore take a very highly consultative approach in coming up with each theme, including getting views not just from within the TIZ family internally, but also from stakeholders, including some of you who are seated in this room. The selection of the theme for this year's conference followed a similar consultative approach. So with that said, I'm very happy to announce that our theme for the 2025 Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference is collaborative actions for integrity and transparency in elections. So that's collaborative actions for integrity and transparency in elections. Now, of course, Bright is going to go into greater detail in terms of what has informed our choice of this theme. But suffice to say that we all know that, of course, Zambia is going to be going to the polls next year. And so part of our rationale for selecting this theme was to kickstart our advocacy interventions around the 2026 general elections. Our reasoning also goes beyond that. Over the last 25 years that we have been working in Zambia, one of the most visible areas where corruption has manifested itself has been in the political arena, particularly in relation to the electoral process in its entirety. So the need to promote integrity in Zambia's electoral landscape cannot be overemphasized. As Zambia approaches the 2026 elections, the legal and institutional environment has largely remained unchanged, despite different government commitments to undertaking broader electoral reforms. The EU Observation Mission report that followed the 2021 elections made a number of very important and key recommendations, which included the repeal of the Public Order Act, the enactment of a law on campaign financing, and the strengthening of mechanisms to address electoral violence. Evidently, not much progress has been made in actualizing these recommendations, and it is our hope that the ZACC 2025 theme will provide an opportunity to give greater impetus to the actualization of those recommendations. So as we continue with preparations towards the conference, we invite you to give us your ideas for panel discussions that are going to address various facets of our theme in order to bring out key insights that are going to enable different stakeholders to contribute towards a free, fair, and transparent electoral process for next year's elections. In addition to your ideas, we also invite you to partner with us in delivering a successful Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference for this year. In all previous 5 editions, we have been humbled by the generous support of you, our cooperating partners, in helping us to make the Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference the flagship anti-corruption event in Zambia. And we trust that we can count on your continued support to deliver yet another successful event this year. With these remarks, I'm very happy to formally declare that the theme for the 2025 Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference is now officially launched, and the hard work towards what will be another memorable event will continue in earnest, and we look forward to seeing all of you there. I thank you, and may God bless us all.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Maurice Nyambe. Okay, so I would like to invite you to a photo session. I'd like to invite you to a photo session briefly as we launch the highlights report. So everyone, you're welcome. We've already set the chairs for you there for the photos. Please come with your highlights report. These things you should have on, eh? Did you bring your batteries?
Did they bring your batteries? I think you can ask for batteries.
They'll bring batteries.
This one is flat.
They're flat, these things. We don't have our own batteries. What size is this? So let's switch the let's switch it. Because we are Okay, so I think we can move on to the next slide. So, making the presentation on the section 5, Zambia anti-corruption conference proposal, which essentially is a strategy for communication. So, as already alluded to, my executive director that we spoke around the issues of the film. So, I'll just briefly give the background of the film, why we consider this particular film for the conference, and then we move on to how we break down the film, which is the total price of the film, and then implementation strategy in terms of what aspects, what are the, how the offers look like in terms of planning. And then we will end with the conference strategy and mobilization strategy. Just give once more what the is and how we plan to address that. So already mentioned that, of course, we know that Zambia is going to host the 2026 elections, and elections were in our mind that we were thinking around how to do this particular conference. But two critical issues that we need to look at. One is the need for electoral integrity, as this is a big issue, so I'll start with defining this first of all. So electoral integrity refers to the adherence to democratic principles and international standards in the conduct of elections. So here are the in around the 2026 election, what kind of incidents are we going to appeal to, what standards are we going to follow to conduct this particular election? Everyone can? Yes. So we want free, fair, and transparent regulation. I hope I'm not the only one here. We want free, fair, transparent, and regulation. So that should happen if you have electoral regulation. However, there's a challenge globally. There's increasing evidence that corruption and unregulated donations are exerting an influence in politics and thus undermining the integrity of nations. So, if you're asking the question, which is always the question that people ask, why is TIZ? What is TIZ doing around issues? And so that is the answer, because corruption has an inflection through the issue of unregulated donations, which will then determine outcomes of elections and politics, and then it undermines what we are calling the second reason why we feel the conflict around this issue is the need for election reform and voice and regular operation of this. That there is the EU of the Election Commission report, which made a number of key recommendations that we are supposed to be action upon. And we observed that after the report came out, demonstrated some initial commitment. But if you look through some of these recommendations for reform, you will see that there is almost nothing that has been done to address this issue. Number one is the repeal of the Public Order Act. Number two, the revision of candidacy requirements. Number three, the enactment of laws that is ever part of the whole in finance regulation. Number four, enhancing the legal framework that address legal issues. Five, developing clear guidelines for the application and conduct of observance. And then six, strengthening the mechanism to address racial violence. So if you ask yourself, what progress has been made in this recommendation? We want to create a platform through this conference to hear feedback from the different stakeholders, from government, the actors, on what they have done to address these reforms as we get into the election. So that is the other objective of the conference around advocacy for electoral reforms. Because if you don't address issues, for example, of electoral violence, it means that we end up having a situation like 2021 because the context has not changed as we need to say. So now breaking down the theme, which has already been given a launch, collaborative action for integrity and transparency in elections. Of course, there are two core issues here. One is election integrity, which I already explained. The other one is election transparency, and where we want to shine a bit more light on this issue. So if you look at the bottom, there are key issues, topics, and some things that all the conference look into. The first one is the electoral legal framework and reforms, which are just explained. So we want to look at the different laws, and usually at the conference, our second panel discussion. So we usually have the first panel discussion, which explains the things from the perspective of different stakeholders. And then we have our second panel discussion, which gives us the legal framework around the conference. And so we have the first part, if you look at the bottom, which is the legal framework and reforms. So definitely be a panel discussion. We should look at issues in the legal framework, electoral process act, and other laws that relate to elections. Number two, independence of the election management body. Obviously, that's the key question that needs to be addressed. How independent is the Commission of Zambia? What is the feel of the different stakeholders around the independence and the ability to manage the outcome of elections? Obviously, that would be a very good discussion as well. Then the discussion on political party in terms of democracy, which is around issues of the adoption process, how political parties are proposing candidates, what programs are making. Depends what processes, what procedures they have in terms of enhancing the workers within their own political parties. For all information, we just did a study on political parties, and we found that there are a lot of gaps in the transparency finances, obviously also there are a lot of gaps in regards to these other issues of democracy as well. Other studies that we have done have revealed that the adoption process is a high risk area in terms of corruption. So we want to know how this process is actually managed by the political parties. The next one is, of course, the sterilisation and voter education. Also, we want to hear about from the different actors, stakeholders, what plans they have in terms of sensitizing the public and making sure that it's effective voter education as we approach the election. Obviously, an informed voter needs to make a proper decision because they understand how they should be able to do this issue. Then we have political party financing and state action. Here, of course, it's the discussion that we have been having, I think, for some time now. As here again, we will having advocacy efforts around this issue, and so we are going to shine light on this particular issue. The question is, how are political parties financed? Who funds these political parties? And what is the risk of missing funding of political parties in terms of state action? What happens when these political parties form a government when they are being funded by these resources? So that is another discussion. And obviously, for all of this, you ask yourself, okay, who are the people coming for the conference? Obviously, we know that the core participants for the conference are going to be the political parties or representatives from the political parties because they are concerned around all of these issues. Lastly, we are talking about collaboration in monitoring coordination. So we all know that there are also actors that participate in monitor elections, and so we are also thinking about what is the effective strategy in terms of monitoring the elections that is upcoming. So what are we going to do? What collaborative efforts? Issues like where is the polling station, where is CMG going to monitor in terms of polling station? No discussion to think about the collaborative approach, strategy around effective monitoring of elections. What aspects is there going to monitor? What aspects are other stakeholders going to monitor as well? That discussion. So those are the issues, topics, if you want, or some things in terms of the areas we expect this conference to address. So I'll move on to some notes. Date and location. So the conference will be held from the 1st to the 3rd of December. I said 1st to the 3rd of December, 3 days. But if you look on the other side, you see 2nd and 3rd of December. Because the first day is the youth conference. So the first day will be the youth conference, which is the 1st of December. And then the main conference, if you want the adult conference, which is going to be on the 2nd and 3rd of December. In terms of where, this will be ZACC. Why, as I mentioned, in terms of location, the 25 conference will be held in Lusaka, and the majority of the 4 stakeholders who are the political parties based in Lusaka. So I don't think we make a lot of sense for us to go elsewhere and then start translating people from Lusaka. All of them are so much cost there, and so we locate the conference where the host stakeholders. So it will be Lusaka. We're not saying we didn't get because that process processes, but somewhere will be Lusaka. Participants and attendants. So we are targeting 200 delegates to attend this conference. The prize of the core participants who are the political party representatives. We have the Electoral Commission of Zambia, as well as regional electoral bodies. We also post plan to invite civil society organizations. So that will be comprised of the president, other delegates, of course, from the government ministries, agencies, operating partners, traditional leaders, members of parliament, youth influencers, representatives from universities and schools. So I hope you are taking notes so that when we open the discussion, you can ask if you are somebody there. This is the time to do that. Okay, so the last part here, I want to just decide the selection of attendance to be based on expression of interest to attend the conference. Many stakeholders encourage to think why we haven't been invited to this conference. So just like we started last year we implemented this approach. So we're going to issue an expression of interest to attend the conference. It helps us because at least we know that we are inviting people who are interested in attending the conference. So other than just sending out the invitation and not being sure whether this person will come or this organization will come or not. So if you express your interest, which is just a form that you can do online and send it back, you'll be able to have a listing of all the different stakeholders that are interested in the conference, and then we make our selection from that particular list. Those that are interested. Obviously, expression of interest to attend is not automatic invitation to attend, but this helps us to know which categories of stakeholders and how they try to get the total attendance for the conference. Now we go to the structure and the segments of the conference in terms of how to host it. Here I would say from the start that this remains largely the same. They're not changing much except for some minor adjustments. So the event will feature a mix of high-level speeches, organizations, panel discussions, so those are the four elements of the conference, and youth-led presentations. So this has been adjusted from the event and quiz. We want to see the youth speak a bit more other than just debating participating in the quiz. So we want segments of sessions where the youth speak after the presentation. So I think that of course this requires a preparation to start preparing the university and the school so that they can give us their perspective on some of these issues. And so we are making that kind of adjustment there. So the conference will also feature a technical awards dinner, I think around the 5 years celebration of TI system. So that will still remain as well as the last part, which is the closing ceremony of the conference. Outputs and outcomes of the conference. So, as I have already mentioned in the previous presentation, we have the traditional conference declaration, which highlights the commitment for all the different stakeholders in terms of market conditions for the next year to address following the conference. So, we still have the conference declaration there of the stakeholders. And then, of course, this will include the political parties. And the political parties will encourage to sign the no violence and elections pledge, which is the second outcome of the conference, or outcome one of the conference. So here we are saying, beyond just declaration, we want to encourage the political parties to commit to a particular set of pledges, which we are going to monitor as we monitor the effectiveness of the elections, which political parties are living up to their pledge. So that when we are speaking or issuing our statements, we have a basis for saying this political party is committed to these particular elements, for example, of the rights to the voters, and so on and so forth, so that we can have a basis when we observe that they are not living up to those commitments. And then here we also track the implementation of stakeholder commitments to the conference. So this again is individuals commitments that are made to improve speeches, nice discussion. Sometimes people just say it's a panel discussion and someone says my office is open to engage with you, the civil society address is open. So that's a commitment. So it means that civil society address yes, you see whether the office is open. That is something that we try to see. They really open the door for them. Finally, the conference budget and organization strategy, the provisional budget for the 2025 ZACC is 1.5 million kwacha. The primary cost driver of the course includes the conference cost and the accommodation of regional and international delegates. So that is the total cost of the conference. Possibly, just to mention that this is far much less than hosting the conference outside the center. So it's a reduction compared to the cost of the conference. In terms of budget gap, we have a conference budget deficit of around 1 million kwacha, which will be mobilized through financial support for relevant stakeholders, including partners, civil society organizations, and private sector. So I'll briefly talk about the organization strategy. So just to note that the conference itself started as an activity of TIZ, but it grew very big. So initially, it was an activity that TIZ was able to fully finance and manage. But we observed at the conference in bigger and bigger that we need some aspect of administration for this particular conference. And so that is where the strategy was mobilizing for the conference started. So as the conference becomes bigger, it means that other corporate partners, stakeholders, will then support the conference in cost financially. So in terms of what we do, once we have developed the budget, that has already been done, the budget that we are in the highlight of the budget, that budget is then estimated service or share with different stakeholders, corporate partners, and other civil society that are willing to support the conference, and then you'll look through. So usually what we have is about 3 types of financial commitments for the conference. The first one is what I would say unconditional financial support. So stakeholders just say you like the conference and you like to support the conference. I would say anything about which aspects of the conference exactly they are support. And so we have that as first part of support that we get from the stakeholders, and then that usually by the signing of the contract to us, we then receive those funds and then give a report at the end of spending those resources. The second one is direct funding and direct supposed to some line item costs, and this has happened as well. Also, this actually last year was used that we got. And so this is where the funder looks at the budget and then identifies cost line which they want to support. And then they communicate that to us. Most of the times, this support is direct to the vendor. So they pay directly to the conference facility, or they pay directly to the brand, the ones that are doing the branding, as well as the second support that we receive. Then the last one is the support that's the visibility action with respect to specific panel discussion. And so usually this one comes from civil society organizations that we see they are very strong in the advocacy on a particular issue. For example, the issue that I mentioned, and so they want to support a particular panel discussion. So that support is like paying part of the conference into a panel discussion, as well as supporting the delegates in terms of going to participate in that panel discussion. And then it means that they will have added visibility to the panel discussion. Most of the time, they will either be the panelists of that discussion or the moderator of that particular panel discussion. So that's my short presentation about the posting. So I'm now looking forward to the feedback after speaking to the Okay, so what I will do is we want to receive your friendship. Instead of telling us at this 2 days before the conference, this is the time to tell us. But so I think we can do all the way now. If I want to do anything, also do it for the live stream, then yeah. Let me excuse you for anyone who wants to go first? Are you happy with the theme? What's your concern? You want us to adjust? What's if I don't give you a problem? Yes, Mr.
Thanks for the presentation, and I think no major comments on the actual theme. I think it's timely, and I think is we're aligned with the upcoming elections in 2026. And the sub-themes that you highlighted, I think, are also appropriate. Maybe just a couple of points that could be considered. They may already be things that you have considered. One is around information integrity. Of course, we're working with a coalition on information integrity, and I think that would also be an interesting discussion, given the whole issues around information, the media, and their role when it comes to elections from a transparency lens or in terms of integrity itself. The other point I think you highlighted, the party dynamics, the internal dynamics, and also the legislation related to the political parties. But if there's a way of also incorporating some discussion on women's participation, because if you're talking about fair, credible, there's also the aspect of representation, I think, which would be important to consider. I think those, the last one was on some new emerging issues around elections, such as AI, social media, and so on. If there's space also to look at that. I know I'm now throwing out a menu list and you already have a tight program. But I think those are issues that could be interesting and also responsive to the times that we're living in as well.
Thank you very much. Those are very insightful comments. This is food for thought, right? Yeah. I don't need to respond, right? Okay, but I love the idea of social media exploration. I think it's a critical issue in other countries that we have to consider. Women's participation in elections, this always comes up when it comes to issues for political party financing, because obviously economic situation. I thought I was audible. Okay, so women participation, I think this usually comes up when it comes to issues of internal democracy of political parties, and definitely we'll have an eye out for this. Yeah, so those are my comments, but these are very insightful and we will consider them, of course, moving forward. Any other comment? Yes.
Thanks again for the theme and for the flow of for the presentation of how the conference is going to flow. I've noted that you mentioned that political parties will make pledges on and not having violence during the elections. I'm just thinking that maybe you can also include pledges on them if they won the elections, following on ensuring that they implement electoral reforms.
Okay.
Just for them to start. I know they do put those things in their manifestos and so forth, but maybe we can make a few pledges as well around that so that then people can hold them accountable on to what they say.
Okay. Yes.
Yes, just a small comment. You may be aware that there's an elections conference scheduled for, I think, November. So it would be nice to just coordinate so that the anti-corruption conference sort of builds on to that conference. Thank you.
So, yes, please.
Okay.
We have another comment. Yes.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to appreciate, of course, the theme. I think it's in line with the interest in the country. So I think it will raise a lot of interest for participation. Two thoughts. Probably they will turn into questions. But I was thinking of hoping that the youth conference will not again just bring the secondary school pupils who might not really, of course, they're necessary and important to participate, but looking at the theme and what will be at stake, the youth participation, not only as voters, but also as young people who want to fill up some of these political spaces, leadership spaces. So it would be good to look at how we include not only the school-going pupils in the conference, but opening it up to those that have the political interest as youths. But also at the same time, I was thinking when we're looking at inviting the political parties, who exactly are we inviting? I'm just thinking, if this one of the political parties comes out, will this turn out to be a campaign platform where they just try to talk about what they really want to achieve at the end of the day? So I think it would be good also to really scrutinize and ensure that those that we are bringing will be able to add value to the conversations that we want to have. The other aspect, maybe this is something that number of cooperating partners and civil society organizations should already start calling for. I think running to the elections next year, a number of political parties still have challenges with showcasing their manifestos, and I think ZACC has already touched on this. So I don't know how, because maybe going into December, we should already have particular, manifestos that we should be able to hold these political parties accountable to, as they, promise so many things to the Zambian citizens. So I don't know if it is something that also will be part of the conversations during the conference and so forth. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So maybe I can just briefly respond to some of them, but obviously these are for inclusion in the strategy. On the pledge on implementing electoral reforms, I think, yes, that can be expanded, but just to mention that perhaps in terms of structure, this will be political parties selecting particular commitments. So instead of, because if we just put all the commitments and ask them to just subscribe to all of it, it may be difficult for them to sign onto the pledge. And so they will be given the option to select particular commitments. So we can put varied number of commitments on that particular pledge, and then we will take note what the particular political party has pledged or committed to. Then, yes, we are aware of the elections conference that is being held, and we had a bit of thought around that particular issue. Our understanding is most of it will border on the regional perspective, and so we will work closely with them to make sure that some of the key issues that are discussed at regional level will then be echoed in our conference, because our conference will mostly discuss the local context. Yes. Then including young political voices and youth organization. This is a brilliant suggestion. And I think we are very happy to hear that. And obviously looking forward to working close with you in terms of the different youth networks that you have. And it is true that we need to expand the scope beyond just the students and the pupils, to then include youth organizations, youth voices, aspiring young people in terms of politics and things like that, so that it is enriched as well, considering also that we are adjusting from just debate and quiz to actual presentation and talks, and so we can include that particular thought as well. Who exactly will are we going to be inviting? This is a very interesting question. Obviously, the subject matter is political in nature, and so we've said the core participants are political parties, but just for you to perhaps be encouraged, we already have existing relationship with political parties. And so we are going to ride on that particular relationship. They understand what we have been advocating for. Usually, when we make our invitations, we work with the Secretary Generals of the political parties. We can't, of course, promise you that someone won't say something political like a campaign slogan or something, because we know in the nature of politicians, and the elections will be very close, they would definitely do that. But in terms of our approach to making sure that it's a neutral place that we can have discussions that are going to be well informed, we are not inviting political party cadres. We're inviting those that are in the management structure of the political party. Then secondly, also we were going to be trying to be more broad-based in terms of our invitation. So we're not inviting only one particular section of the political parties. We're going to make sure that we have different voices so that we balance in terms of the discussions that will ensue at the conference, so that we can balance in terms of different perspectives. Yeah. Then political party manifesto. Yes, this is a discussion that is very critical. Just for your information, political party manifestos, when we did our review in it before the 2021 general elections, we only found 3 political parties with published manifestos. But our recent study on political party revealed that actually they have manifestos and they developed them, but they did not circulate them widely. So I think there's another issue there, as you were saying, maybe the role of the media to get hold of these manifestos, making sure that they're actually publicly available, that everyone has access to this, and then holding these political parties accountable to those particular commitments or promises in their manifesto. Okay, so I think I've commented on all of the issues, and you have feedback in terms of how we can possibly proceed with this. Any maybe second round of comments, because this is a discussion. So if something else has come up, let me check my watch. Do we still have time? Okay. Yes, please. Okay, just wait for the mic.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I came late, so I missed the presentation which was the most important for me. Anyway, the conference on electoral integrity is organized by EPD, European Partnership for Democracy. It's a EU-funded project. I signaled that you are having a conference. This one conference is being planned by Transparency International, and then we should look for synergy between two conferences, two events, because also in terms of funding, but in terms of, they are bringing, quite a lot of different experts, so instead of repeating the same things, to have a bigger impact, so we can discuss later on how it can be done. But actually, my colleagues managing this project, they are already aware. So yesterday, when I learned about this event, I already let them know. And I already let them know, I'll give them first feedback. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Perfect. So we'll work together. Any other comment? Okay, yes.
From the themes that will be discussed in the panel discussions, I want just to find out whether the sensitization and voter education will include national registration card issuance, because we have seen some drama happening around there as well now.
Okay. Okay. Definitely something that needs to be added. So I'll take note of that as well. It seems I overestimated the time. We have, change, completed the meeting, time and change remaining. So just going to the final part of the meeting now. So the final part of the meeting is the photo session, which we have already had, right? Unless there's another special photo session. Okay, so I would like to call upon Mr. Maurice Yambe to dismiss us, to close the meeting. Call upon you to give closing remarks. Yes.
Thank you very much, Bright. Not much to say really, apart from just to thank all of you, our cooperating partners, for having responded very affirmatively to our invitation to this meeting. For us, this is always a very important event, and we started doing this, as in this this meeting to prepare for the conference. I think the first one we did was last year when we were preparing for last year's conference. What it allows us to do is that it allows us to gather different perspectives that feed into how we are planning to deliver on the conference. And as Bright mentioned, this is a conference that has grown over the years. And even in terms of the interest from different stakeholders, we have seen it actually evolving and becoming even more significant and more consequential. So for us, this I would call it a pre-ZACC meeting is quite important to just get perspectives that will inform how the event is going to be implemented. So we are very thankful for all your different input, and we pledge that we are going to take into account that input as we make our final preparations for the conference. Of course, the one that is going to be happening in November, we are very aware of that. In fact, even just yesterday, I was having a conversation with someone from the EU, and we are going to be having a sit down so that we can see how we can achieve synergies between the two events. Because of course it wouldn't make sense to be talking about the exact same things about 3 weeks or so apart. So I think that is definitely something that we are going to be doing. So yeah, I was asked to dismiss you. So you are dismissed very respectfully, but you are dismissed. Thank you. I don't know about the arrangement for lunch. Maybe Bright can speak a bit more about that.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I'm going to invite you to a networking